Attention.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
My name is Dan McKissick. I'm the president of the Denver Library Board. I just want to say a big thanks to such a nice crowd out here tonight. Really appreciate everybody coming out.
You'll need a mic.
Yeah, hold it up.
Do I need a bigger mic
No, you're fine.
now?
Better.
Yeah. Okay. You were. Yeah. And a huge thank to our two candidates who were able to make it. Two of them were not able to make it, Ella and Ed. Ella's having a baby and Ed didn't want to, but so we're gonna jump right into this. Our first question is basically gonna give a good basis for why the both of you are doing this. So I'm just gonna read our first question. I'll hand the mic back to you.
All right.
Why have you decided to run for a town supervisor post? Pretty basic stuff. We could start with you, Leah.
So, about 3 years ago, when Chairman Brisk was elected to chairman, there was a vacancy on the board that there was a space to be appointed. And so I threw my hat in the ring at that time for that appointment. And ultimately they gave that to Ed Cottingham. But then since then, Chairman Brisk and some friends and business owners in the area have been encouraging me to give it another try. So what really sealed it for me, last fall, we had a chimney fire, and I'm losing my mind. The police got there really quickly. Samantha was there within a few minutes, and then the fire department was there within about 15 minutes. And within 30 minutes, our volunteer fire department is there. They got on our roof, they got the fire out, and they just very compassionately assured me that everything was going to be right, going to be fine. Now, it was right at that same time that the levy discussion was going on. And if you recall, the modest levy increase was to support these critical services and some other needs. And many residents reacted with frustration and anger because they felt caught off guard, that they didn't know, they didn't have all the information, and people came to that meeting really upset. And for me, making sure that our police and fire departments have the equipment, facilities, and staffing that they need is an issue that weighs heavily on me, as it should for all of us, because we don't know the next time we're going to need the police or the fire or the clear road, or not to have a tree down on our road as we need to get out. There's snow plowed. We all need these basic things. And the thought of those things not going funded because of something that could have been communicated more proactively, and communication is just like, that's where I live and breathe in my job. So I just felt like if we have clear communication, we can all end up rowing in the same direction. I'm running because I want to improve and strengthen the two-way communication between the board and the residents, and bring a fresh perspective and renewed collaboration to the town.
Great. All right, Kevin Meyer. See a lot of faces I know, a lot of faces I don't know, so that's great. I've been involved with the town on and off most of my life. Been back, I retired in 19, came back home, and Three Lakes has morphed quite a bit in that time frame, and I wouldn't say all for the positive. There's a lot of great attributes to this town, but it's pretty tough when you come home Friday night from a dinner or a party somewhere, and you come through town and there's not a whole lot of cars, or you're here on a weekend and there's not a whole lot of cars. And we've lost our economic vibrancy, and we need to get that back in this community. And that's a big driver for me to want to do this. There's a couple of questions out on the list, but one of the bit that I'm going to touch on, but one of the big things for me is, it's a fine line for a town supervisor or a town chairman or anybody in a town position about what do you do from an economic driver perspective. And I actually think we're at a critical junction in Three Lakes where we need to do something differently than we've done over the years. Not that there hasn't been attempts, but we've got to look at this a little bit differently. We've got to figure out how to bring vibrancy back to this community so that we can have the town that we somewhat remember. It'll never be the same. Be perfectly clear. The days of Three Lakes with 40 resorts, couple hotels, gas stations, marinas, all that stuff, those days are gone. But we can build a bigger and better Three Lakes again, where we have some economic vibrancy. We have people in town walking around on weekends, spending money, bringing their dollars into our community instead of going north of us 9 miles. So that's a really big driver for us. I was actually at the same meeting when the referendum came up. I wasn't so concerned about our critical services being met. Fire department, police, we're always going to have those. They're always going to be very capable. We have great volunteers in there, but we do have to be diligent about how we spend our money. And there was some money that's been spent in the last couple of years, and I don't absolutely agree with how they spent it. It may not have come out of the town budget, may have come out of some other coffers, but at the end of the day, it becomes a town liability, and now it's a town asset that we've got to cover. And we've got to be thinking about some of that stuff. They're a little freehand on how they did that. So, just want to come back and take a look at, from a town perspective, what can we help do to drive vibrancy back in this community? And it's going to take all kinds of forms and shapes. We've got a couple of big things happening. We've got the guy who wants to sell his lease on the grocery store. What happens if that doesn't happen? What does Three Lakes start to look like? And how do we bring some of that back to this town? I work with a couple of different organizations. I'm on several boards to try to figure out what else we can do for Three Lakes and bring people and tourism back into this community and bring some economic spend back into this town. So that's my big drivers for wanting to run company.
Thank you both. Those are great answers. And we will, hopefully we'll have a little time for questions if anybody, if you have questions on any of this stuff, make a note of it, and hopefully at the end of the night, we'll still have some time for that. Going into the next question, what major issues do you foresee tackling in the next 4 years? And Leah, why don't you go first again? Is that okay? That's fine.
In the next few years, I see 3 major priorities that would be for me. Improving two-way communication between the town board and its residents so people feel informed and heard on important issues. I want to create more opportunities for residents to share their opinions and stay informed about town projects. I foresee forming an economic development committee that would bring together the stakeholders of this town to make Three Lakes more attractive to year-round businesses, employers, and new residents. And then lastly, I'd like to see a greater unity fostered among our many nonprofits and organizations in this town, so we can work together more effectively instead of operating in parallel. We can work together.
All right. For me, it's pretty simple and some similar themes there. One is we do have quite a few nonprofits in town. I think if we talked about what's the town's role in economic development or economic vibrancy, I think also part of that is leveraging and fostering those organizations to help drive the growth that we need in this community. So, working with those groups, the big one, and we just took a gut punch when the TID bill did not make it to the assembly floor. That's a huge one. And we've got to go fight tooth and nail to get that back. We've got an election coming up in the state that could change the way the House looks. Right now it's run by the Republicans, could be run by the Democrats. We have 2 Republican people, Schwerigan and Pelaskowski. Great, they're in our districts. Those are the people we need. Well, they may be Republicans sitting in a Democratic-led state next month or next election. So we've got to figure out how do we work across party lines and across the tables to try to get some things swung our way. We really need a TID district. If we think we're going to want to get a hotel into this town, we may be able to get some capital. There's a lot of money in here, a lot of people we've spoken to that are willing to invest in this hotel. But we've really got to come up with some other ways for incentives. Other communities are doing these incentives. If I'm a hotel and I'm looking, Three Lakes are not giving me anything. Monaco's gonna give me something, I'm just using that as an example. Sorry, Mr. Briggs. But that's one of the things we've got to look at. We've got to figure out how we bring some new venues to this community. And that TID was super important to us. And so we've got to figure out, and we've got to spend the next year before they go to session again. And they've got a great job. They're done in March and they don't meet again until November. That's frustrating in its own right. But we've got to figure out how we get in front of these parties so that we can start to have some real serious dialogue about, if you're really important about the Northwoods and you want to foster growth in the Northwoods, help Three Lakes. And we've really got to bring that to the table, and we've got to make these guys want to do it. And we may be having to work across party lines. That's fine, not a problem. But we're going to have to do it a little bit differently, and we're going to have to be fairly aggressive about it. That's probably my big one. I think a lot of other things fall into play. We have what I call transient dollars. We don't have people coming in, checking into the resorts on Saturdays anymore and coming in with fresh money. Just isn't here anymore. We need to get that money back into this community. We need to have a reason to draw people here, come open their wallets, spend it at our restaurants, spend it at our shops. There's got to be that reason to come to Three Lakes. And you know what? In the first place, you got us. We've got 3-day rentals, which was a huge win. Thanks to everybody who fought for that on the weekends. But we've still got to have heads and beds here. We've got to get more people in this town.
Make sure we use hers.
Thank you both. Great answers. Everybody can hear, right? We do have a microphone we can use if we need to, but everybody's hearing okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. And also a library board disclaimer, none of us are running for town board. We wrote these questions, mostly Patty wrote these questions. If you feel the need to rephrase the question at all, take whatever liberties you need to. We asked questions that we think would be of use to voters and people who want to know, but if it doesn't quite match what it should, feel free to rephrase it if you need to. Where are we at next here? All right. If elected, what 3 steps would you take to put Three Lakes on a firmer financial footing?
Let's see. First of all,
You need our stagehand for that.
Tell ya.
You're welcome.
if elected, the 3 things that I personally would need to do, looking at Three Lakes' financial situation. First, I'm going to take the time to thoroughly research our financial situation, because I'm not going to want to offer ideas for things that I don't know 100% things about. So I'm gonna be digging into that, take a look at our current budget, debt levels, our long-term capital needs, and then I know that Roger Brisk, what was important to him when he started his role was stewarding our properties and our equipment and making sure things were maintained properly. That was something that he really owned, and I would come alongside him and the board with that. Second, I think it's important to hold listening sessions like this in town halls with residents and business owners, property owners, and just gather input on priorities, on their financial concerns for the town, on their concerns about our tax burden. And I would hold listening sessions to just learn more about what people are feeling about the financial situation of the town. And then in meetings, I'm going to be the one to continue to ask the tough questions about before any major spending or borrowing has happened. And I know they look at this, is this necessary? Have we explored all the grant opportunities that we can, or are there lower cost options? Can we phase a project in or partner with somebody? So whenever considering spending in those meetings, I'm not just going to vote along and be like, yes, I'm going to be the one asking the questions and, following every possible avenue before making.
Right. So again, very similar lines, so for Three Lakes, the budget really consists of 3 things, right? You've got your expenditures at $4.7 million. You've got your revenue at roughly 1.6, 1.7. And then we have a levy that we're looking at usually typically on an annual basis around $3.1 million. So, you go in and dig in those numbers. We have 14% debt, which from all parts and things, it's not a huge amount of money. And so that's good debt because we have very low interest rates at the time we borrowed the money. So, you should be in the numbers already. And, that's kind of critical just to be able to understand what happens and, attending town board meetings and things like that. You get built into the numbers, you get to understand what's happening in the budget. So I think the budget, the staff we have on the town, they do a great job. So they know what they're doing. Now it is about asking some of the tough questions. And I also think they've done some good job. It's hard because they're all sitting here. Hate to get the hand smacked. But keep on the look at. But they've done a good job. They in all fairness, they rang the fire department in on their awkward spend, which I think needed to happen as well. So, and again, whether we need equipment or not, it wasn't vetted the right way, and we have to assure those guardrails are in place, and I think they are. But we have to continue to kind of look at the tough spends and make ask the right questions. In my career, I managed a $600-700 million budget. In corporate America, I know what it is to have to be profitable. And, when your shareholders are kind of barking at you about what the return on investment is, you have to make some very, very tough decisions because you got to get a return. Running the town is very similar to that. So we have to look at every dollar we spend, every dollar of revenue that we generate. And are there other, revenue generation opportunities? Go back to a common theme. We get more hotel, we get a hotel, we get more VRBOs, we have a room tax in this community of 5.5%. That's revenue that does not come out of the taxpayer's pocket. That's revenue from the people who come up here and enjoy our resources, use our assets from a natural resources perspective, and those type of activities. That is an ability for us to generate some revenue. So again, we've got to go look at how do we use some of these and leverage some of these capabilities to generate more revenue for the town. Then that goes back to working with the different organizations. How do we bring new businesses in? How do we get that hotel in here? How do we get shops filled on Main Street? We've got a lot of vacant buildings right now. How do we want to foster somebody to go out and take that risk, become a small business person, which is scary in its own right? How am I going to make payroll? Or you are payroll. How am I going to make my mortgage, right? So, those are things that we've got to be able to work together with organizations in the town. I'm working on a group called REV. It's Rural Entrepreneurial Venture. We always forget what the V stands for. And it really is about how do we foster entrepreneurs coming into our community. And we've got some current entrepreneurs in there. We've got people with a lot of brilliant ideas. And we're trying to figure out how do we make that happen so we can fill some of the storefronts that we have in town. We just held a meeting last week with some of the current business owners to get some of their ideas. And it was really a good meeting. We saw business owners that participated that hadn't participated in things in the past. So we've got to figure out from all facets, whether it's expenditures, revenue generation, efficiencies, how do we make our financials stronger? But we've got it. It all goes back to growing this community and growing the economics within our.
More great answers. Okay, and this probably, you might have answered just some of this already. What role do you see the town board playing in economic development? More specifically, is it the board's responsibility to seek out new businesses to come to Three Lakes?
So I believe the town board should take a leadership role in that, in economic development, but not act like a full-time recruitment agency, like actively going out and recruiting businesses. I think the board's responsibility is to create the conditions that make Three Lakes attractive to new businesses and startups. The first step I would take is to form that economic development committee that can be made up of town board members, chamber representatives, downtown Three Lakes leaders, local business owners. And this committee could develop concrete strategies to make Three Lakes more attractive for new businesses and local startups. And not just like another committee that fills our calendar, but a committee that actually is boots on the ground doing some work. We should focus on highlighting our strengths, like our mill rate is one of the lowest municipal mill rates in the state. We should focus on another strength is our broadband coverage and our outstanding school district. We could prepare target marketing materials for businesses looking at places to open up, things like a welcome packet or just help in those small steps. Where do I go for grants? How do I make sure my sign is legal with the county and just help them with those steps they need as they're looking at opening a business, and then continue to pursue grants that support small business growth and downtown revitalization. So I don't think the board should act as like a full-time sales team chasing companies, but we can create the right conditions, our low taxes, reasonable regulations, and our welcoming community that encourage businesses to choose Three Lakes.
Yeah, very similar role. I mean, I'll make no bones about it. I'm a big government stay out of business kind of person. Have been my whole career, but there is a time and a place for everything. And Three Lakes is at that time where we need people to help step in. We agree on the fact that we have to leverage some of the other organizations in town. We just got the Thrive grant, which is going to help us take a hard look at, how's the community structured? What are some of the things that we need to have and what can that do for us? We've got, the downtown Three Lakes, we've got the community foundation. How do we leverage some of those organizations to do some of this, and we bolster or we sponsor it? But I'll be honest with you, if our current town board members, which have done a great job, and Roger, or Chairman Driscoll, get more official, Chairman Briscoe, I mean, at the end of the day, we got to be out pressing some flesh, and we got to be boots on the ground, and we've got to be talking to people. And we've got to do what we can to recruit people to want to come into Three Lakes. You're not going to, right now, there's no reason to naturally gravitate here. If you're a homeowner and want to have great water and outdoor recreation, then nothing better in Wisconsin than Three Lakes. But from a business perspective, we've got to put some advantageous arrows in our quiver to get people to come into Three Lakes and want to open businesses and create jobs and bring vibrancy and get the wallets open from the first that come to this community to help support all the businesses and the individuals that live here. We'll eat load. I'll just take mine tonight.
I feeling left out. We are cranking right along since we only have 2 of our 4 candidates, but our last question for now, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A. But if you received $1 million grant for use by the town, the way you wanted, what would you do with the money and why?
Okay, so I took this question as like, $1 million is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money to get like a full project complete. So I went with it, like, what can we do that's high impact? It's like one thing that we can start to finish. So what I would do is use the funds to look at revitalizing Cy Williams Park and update the bathhouses, and then build like one big beautiful pavilion at the front that would allow community events, concerts, and farmers markets to continue, like, regardless of weather and year round. These visible improvements could make our town center more inviting for everybody while strengthening community pride. And I think strengthening community pride would have a unifying effect that would ripple down through the town. A wave of excitement that would be a new place to gather, a new front door for our town. And I think that would be a quick, high impact project to breathe life into Three Lakes. Or if we really want to have fun, we could have a huge party for the semi-quincentennial in July.
All right, I'm all for that because everybody even knows me. I'm always up for a party. So $1 million party at Cy Williams is what we want to have. So, and we'll take the $1 million for Cy Williams. I'm actually the chairman of an ad hoc group for the park set, and we are looking at rebuilding Cy Williams. For those of you who don't know, the bathhouse has asbestos in it, maintained and sealed, but at some point that needs to come down. So we're working on some different type of venues and some different type of activities and buildings and really making it the entryway gateway into Three Lakes. We actually just applied. One of the people in the group found a grant And it was due on Friday, so we spent Wednesday and Thursday typing up this grant application for $100,000 for development of a plan. So this would be drawings and all the other good type of stuff. We don't know if we're gonna win it yet or not. It's pretty competitive. It's nationwide, but we just spent a lot of time doing that. My thanks to the support cast on that whole thing, which was great. But if we had $1 million, and actually oddly enough, right along the lines with Leah, I would want to go buy some property on the chain and create a park. Because if I look at the greatest asset we have in this community, it is the chain of lakes. And we do not have a park that we own park property. We have the ski club grounds, but we have some other properties. But we do not have a park/beach, and there was a zoning question. You can't build beaches, but sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness. We need to have a great asset like that on the chain. One of the things that I know, I've been growing up here and being able to watch to see, the number of cars at the parking lot by the airport that have boat trailers on them now in the summer on the weekends is packed. As a kid, that was all grass. Nobody ever used it. The old Aero Marine was storing boats in there, just sat unmowed. And today you can see that asset of the chain that we have is drawing people, off-water people coming in here and using that great thing. We also need to have a park on the chain. That's a big ask. That's a lot of spend. Is it realistic? No, but you gave me $1 million, so I'm going to go try. We're going to, George, are you listening? Because I'm coming after your land, buddy. Remember the words adverse possession. George, only joking. Joan, calm down. But yeah, it is. We really do need to have that asset on the chain. We're never going to have the opportunity to do it again. We're just not. It's all going to get developed, and then we're going to sit here with great grandchildren, and they've got Maple Lake, which is a beautiful facility, but that's what we got. So I think that is something. If we had $1 million out of nowhere to go spend it, that's what I would.
We need 2 million so we can develop.
Unfortunately, 2 million doesn't get you much on the chain.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we do have some time for questions. Does anybody have any questions they would like to specifically ask? And I
Speak into the microphone.
Well, Kevin just mentioned something about the chain being one of our greatest, or I would say the greatest asset that we've got around here in terms of bringing in business and everything that you're talking about. That's what people come here for, really. So I'm wondering, what, if any, role do you think the town board plays in protecting that valuable resource?
Let's see. Boats, wakes is probably the hottest topic, right? So wake boats.
That's certainly one issue, but there are plenty of others.
There are plenty, and actually, I would argue that bad boat driving is a bigger detriment to the chain than wake boats are. Because where I sit and watch when I'm enjoying cocktails at sunset, bad boat driving to me is a much more critical issue. And I can show you erosion on my shoreline where the rocks are here, and 5 feet later, the shoreline exists now. And that's not because of wake boats. That's been happening long before that. So I think part of that is there's going to be some educational standpoints. I also think we got to work with the DNR and try to find some shoreline grants. I know I've rebuilt my wall several times. And it used to be when my kids were younger, it was free labor. Now I don't have that anymore. So, I'm down there doing it myself, or, there's some kids at the high school that like to work too, but, I think that's part of it. Wake boats is going to be an interesting conversation. I have a lot of friends who have wake boats. I'm either, I'm in the middle of the road on it. There are some things that bother me about them, and then there are some things that don't. I mean, I don't want to ever deny people the right to have fun. I'm the first one who will get on a throttle and go. But with wake boats, I actually don't worry so much about shoreline erosion as I do about bottom disturbance. It was about 3-4 years ago, there were some deadhead logs floating up in Big Fork and 4 Mile. Well, those all came right after the advent of wake boats. So I think there are some things that we need to understand differently about them. I think there's some right ways to operate them. I've talked to enough owners. that, they've come up with their own solutions. I know Three Lakes Waterfront came to a town board meeting and asked the town to broker a meeting. I actually really would like to see wake boat owners and waterfront do it by themselves first, and see if they can make any headway. But I do think that is probably the most critical thing we need to do too. Waterfront's done a lot with Eurasian milfoil. That's going to be an ongoing battle. I think those are things that we always have to keep in check. I'm a board member on Three Lakes Fish and Wildlife. We do a lot with, back in the day with fish cribs. Now we do fish sticks. We're trying to look at some avenues that we're able to, along with the Waterfront Association, do wildlife or wild rice plantings. I mean, there's a whole lot of things to happen. It's not going to get any easier on the chain. It's just the more houses we get, the more boats we get, the bigger boats we get. You'd hate to think of a path of boat size restriction. I don't think that'll ever come to pass, but I see some of these boats that are Lake Winnebago, Lake Michigan type boats trolling on a chain. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It can't be enjoyable for the driver, nor is it good for our body of water. So, those are things I think we're gonna have to kind of fight our way through and try to understand and see what happens with that. But it's a tough one. So.
Everything Kevin says. When I think about wake boats, I think if you could, it's the artificial wake and they fill the ballast and just make it like extra big. I think if somehow you could regulate, okay, you can have your wake boat, but do you need that artificial wake? Do you need to make it bigger than it naturally would be? And then I think we just need to look at, are we enforcing the restrictions that are already in place for distance from the shoreline and the slow no wake areas, and and that's resources to get more officers out there, et cetera. Yes, but are we enforcing the regulations that are already here?
Any other questions?
Shelley's good.
I don't need a microphone.
I'll repeat it in here so we can hear it on.
So, I came with this question. I've been working on this for a while, but, economics is a huge deal in Three Lakes at the time. And a lot of the conversations, both here and outside of here over the years, seem to be dwelling on, the visitors that come. And, there's an economic spectrum and you've got both ends. And I personally see the spread between those ends growing, and I've been here a long time. So I've really seen that gap widening more toward the people who have the money end than maybe the people who would be working in all these businesses. I think having businesses is great. We do need that. But I don't hear a lot about what we're going to do with the people who are going to be working for these businesses or the people who can't afford any of the housing in our area. The families, I'm a retired teacher from Three Lakes, so I'm concerned about those families, and I think back to those families who can't afford. So, what are you going to do to drop businesses that accommodate those of us who are full-time residents and maybe can't afford those $500,000 houses?
There is a
And what
$500,000.
And what other things can you do to maybe get them to want the Three Lakes so that those businesses who want so badly to be here can thrive?
I can't even repeat that
Right.
one right now, but hopefully it'll answer it. And hopefully the question will be.
I can go first. Right now there's like 30 or 40 homes on the market in Three Lakes, and the median price is $700,000. So yes, if my kids and grandkids wanted to move up here for a job opportunity, they couldn't. Even finding a place to rent, I think, would be difficult. And yeah, it's an issue. And then when we look at what's the median income in Oneida County, is it 40? I'm not even sure, but it's not enough to afford a $700,000 house. So yes, we definitely have this gap of, yes, like there is no middle class, or it's very small and it's shrinking. Yes. And I think looking at where are areas in the town that we can, and this isn't necessarily a town government issue, but what I see, or much that they can do with other than maybe providing some infrastructures, tax breaks. But, to have a developer come in and subdivide an area, get utilities out to that and build some middle, every home, they're all 2-bedroom. Like we need some 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes for the average person. That's the person we want to come and spend here year round. And now there's nowhere for them to live. Or a teacher wants to come and take a job. Are they even going to be living in Three Lakes? Or a family that's attracted by our school system? Where are they going to live? Many friends of ours have run into that. Yes, so it's an issue that definitely needs to be addressed. And I think within that Economic Development Committee, one of the things they can address is housing. I know in the TIF, they were talking about worker housing as well as part of that. So the town's aware of it and working toward it. And I think that would help. But definitely, yes, we need to be focusing on housing for the average person too. Yeah, for sure.
No, so I think that was a great question. And it's actually one that weighs fairly heavily on my mind. There are families here that I know that their great grandparents were early arrivals, settlers in Three Lakes. I don't know that those great grandkids can afford a 2-acre lot in town, if you can find it, right? If it's not snapped up within hours of it being listed. So that is something that I sit back and look at and really struggle with, is where does that go? Now, the TID kind of sort of can address that, but really can't. The Thrive program that the town has just received, I think can help be a solution to this, to understand what we need to do. I think one of the really critical components for this, for affordable housing and to be able to open up some land, is expanding the sanitary district. Now that comes at a really big price tag. And that's something though that we have to take a look at, a very hard look at. And the answer, unfortunately, may be no. But it is something that we have to take a look at. There's a lot of property around town that's developable. It will drive the price up on it, unfortunately, if there is sanitary available for it. But I think that is one of the things that we do need to look at. I also think, and every time I think this, it ends up still going higher. I always thinking some of this real estate stuff's plateauing. And then, there's a lot that just sold for $700,000 on the chain. So, and you just kind of look at that and scratch your head. But it is a real situation. I truly, in my belief system, think if we can work on expanding the sanitary district, we have to figure out, now this is one where I'm fully supportive of a TID. And we can get into discussions about how this all works, like for a hotel, because that's not money out of the town's pocket. However, if you do tax financing for the expansion of the sanitary district, well, that is a cash outlay, and that comes out of the town's pocket that we've got to figure out how to pay back at sometimes. So it does come back to how do you balance that out? But I think we need to take a look at it. I think talking to some of the landowners, about, are you ready to put some of these parcels up for sale? And, everybody wants to maximize what they get for it. Can't deny a profit. But that is some of the stuff that you have to take a look at. And it's a tough one. I wish that one I had a better answer for, but that's probably going to be one of the toughest ones to deal with in town.
More questions, anyone?
Oh, I don't need that.
No, you should.
It's from
Yeah.
If you could change one thing, our zoning code, what would it be and why?
I'll start. We have one of the least restrictive zoning codes in any county in the state. So there's not a whole lot that I can sit back and say I would go change that. If I was to look at it, and then this may go more onto the planning commission. And the planning commission chairman Alex is over there. The number of properties that we have that are zoned to business. We have a big business district, we have a business district downtown here. Our second biggest business district is out by the airport. But yet we have roads that come off the airport and there's vacant properties there that are zoned residential. So that's some of the stuff I think that I would take a look at and try to see it. Also, the county right now is doing a zoning rewrite. We don't know what that's gonna bring. I've called and asked, and some people have said it's gonna make it easier. Some have said, oh my God, you know. So we don't really know what's gonna happen with zoning right now. I think it's, from what I hear from fairly reliable sources, it's gonna get a little less restrictive. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about that, because you're not supposed to build beaches on the chain, and there's beaches popping up all over the chain. So we need to enforce some of the things that we have. But I don't know that there's a whole lot I would change from a zoning perspective. If it's zoned residential today and you'd like to go get a business, there's a change process. You know, I know the Pikes went through it to go from residential to multifamily, and was successful at, so it's doable. But we do have to kind of figure out, you know, where some of that planning wants to happen. So where do we want to see growth from a business perspective versus residential perspective? Which fully exacerbates the problem that you have brought up. So,
An issue that a number of my clients have run into is signage. So the process of changing a sign when you buy a new business, either they're not aware of what the steps are, or they're not communicated properly to them, or they just put up a sign anyway and then they're facing fines. And it's just one simple thing. If we can just make that one step easier for new business owners, I think that would make a difference.
More questions? Way back there, like, we'll go over here first. Hang on a second.
It's to your hotel review. We need, can you use the microphone, please? We have trouble. All right. My vision for the hotel was not what you guys had in the paper a few months ago. My vision is big Victorian 3-story house with a place where you can have a wedding venue, where you can do parties, where you can have entertainment or a band out in the front. On the back side of it would be where you'd have the fishermen and snowmobilers and things like that. But it would be a beautiful looking vision, but you would also pair your hotel with the school system for kids that want to learn how to do these things for a hotel, and then work in the summertime or work after they graduate, where they would stay in town. And that's my vision of it. The vision that you had looked kind of too commercial. You want it to look more homey. This is Three Lakes. Three Lakes is a homey place. I mean, I've been here 50 years, right? And my kids all went to this school. My husband worked at the Violet Sheriff's Department. We lived here. We left Chicago in the 70s and never looked back. There are people down there that want to do that too eventually, but they can't do it right now. They want to bring their families up here. We need a venue and a hotel that says, hey, welcome to Three Lakes. But the one you guys had in the paper didn't say that.
So we'll take that. So the one thing you will find out about me is I'm pretty damn sarcastic. So hotel designs and visualizations or architecture is like going to lickety splits. There's 33 different flavors sitting in that counter. What do you want? And you're gonna have 10 people in there, and you mean never all decide on the same thing, right? So you say Victorian, I'm like, oh God, this is not a Victorian community. So, you know, but part of it is too, is when you get an investor group or a hotel developer that wants to come in, they have a business model. And so, you know, and this isn't a I or a we group, this is a bunch of people who are willing to lay their capital, their money on the table. And they're the ones who picked that organization. Well, you kind of got to go with the flavor they're serving. You know, if it's really ugly, you probably don't go with them. And there were multiple hotels they looked at. Some of them did not fit at all. You know, this one, you know, honestly, when I first looked at it, I was like, ooh. That'd be the biggest building we've ever had in Three Lakes, probably for a really, really long time. But you know what? The more I looked at it, the more I went through Rhinelander and I sat and looked at it and stared at it and drove around and parked at a different angle. And I'm like, it'll fit. But it's change and we don't always like change, but that's no, Lord knows, we need some change in this town from that perspective. We need heads and beds here. Your concept's great. Does it fit in the available lot in the sanitary district that we have? Can you get kids from the school to want to go work? We can't get kids to go work at most of the jobs we have around town right now anyway. So
You can make it a class.
you can, but they still gotta wanna do it. At the end of the day, right? So, you know, that's kind of a very tough balancing act. I agree, wedding venue would be great to have in town. However, there's a whole liquor law problem now with wedding venues that we didn't used to have in Wisconsin. So there's all kinds of things that come into play with that. Really, just give me a hotel for right now. Would I love to have a hotel with a restaurant and a bar like the U of V used to be? Yes.
Yes.
We're not gonna get that. And this is where when I said, we're not gonna have the Three Lakes of old anymore, it's gonna be different. We're all gonna have to get used to that. We can try to replicate what has worked and what made this town really special to all of us, but it isn't gonna be the same. Right? I've been here since '68. It's just not gonna be the same. So, you know, it's just, we all have to get used to that and we've got to figure out what's the right way to do it. How do we, and you're never going to appease everybody. We could come up with your design and you're going to get 15 people that are going to, oh my God, you know, or then we're going to go with Shelley's design and we're going to get another 15 people that don't like it. That's just not going to happen, right? You got to kind of work through it and you try to find not this, that's the most neutral, but the one that aesthetically blends in the best that your developer wants to build. So.
I think.
Yeah, actually, I want that sign.
I think a boutique hotel would be wonderful. And when the first rumblings of, oh, we need a hotel, that's more of what, like, I was picturing in my head. Now finding investors that can make a viable business model out of that in this town, that would be the challenge. And I think that's how they ended up where they did. Because yeah, when I see the cobblestone,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Once it's there, it'll blend in and the rest of the area will kind of build up around it and it'll be this beautiful, vibrant little corner of our town. But a boutique hotel, a wedding venue, those are all great things. Like that's like where, boy, I sure would love to see something like that, maybe additionally someday. But your idea of partnering with the school and possibly Nicolay and their hospitality program is a really good idea. And the school already works with Nicolay in other programs. I know there's welding,
Yeah.
so that's a great idea. And, you know, maybe something that could be fleshed out with that. And I know there's lots of other restaurants in the area that certainly would be looking for, you know, help in the summer. And if somebody could partner that and add it to a credits toward a hospitality program, I think that's a great idea.
Two questions. The first one is,
You have to yell from back there,
sorry.
but we can't, the microphone's for the Zoom people. So you just need to yell for us.
I can use side voice then.
There we go.
Two questions. Have you thought about what your position would be on opting into village powers, which are much more expansive and we wouldn't need the legislature's permission to get it to? Number one. And number two, one of the biggest impediments of building an affordable housing in a subdivision way is that the town has been very reluctant to allow town roads to be the basis for the subdivision. In other words, they're expecting the developer to pay for the road and then it has to meet certain criteria. And they're extremely expensive and there isn't enough margin on a family affordable home to make that development work. Would you be willing, based on the need for affordable housing locally, to actually spend money on a new town road that would allow a developer to build a affordable housing, subdivision in Three Lakes?
Yeah, so I'll take that. Thanks, Greg. So yeah, the whole Village Powers thing, that's a great question, and that is something I think Three Lakes has gotten to a point that we do need to go back and consider. So the Thrive grant that we've just got, that is a lot of what they're going to look at is should we become a village or a city? And I'm not in the inner workings on all of that, but that is I think a very important thing for us to do, because you're right, now we take some of the things that have handcuffed us off the table and they become now town decisions. You know, building roads, you know, I know why they have that ordinance, because I know the developer who put a crappy road in and kind of stuck the town with it. But we kind of do what we do. We went all the way to the other end. So instead of the 4 inches of gravel that went in, we now want 12. And you know, they're stratified at different layers. So I'm supportive of, again, it has to be the business case behind it. It has to look at the scenario of, does this make sense? What's the cost going to be? How do we economically do this for the community? But I would not be opposed to building roads on the town side. I'm watching Sue here.
That's a vision.
Right.
I just do what I'm
I'm not,
told.
I just.
Leah, any thoughts on that?
I agree. I think, the idea of becoming a village or a town or a city is something that should be looked at, certainly when we're bumping up against these things.
Setting the mood in the back to dinner.
There we go.
Probably cocktails over and it's time for dinner.
The disco ball. will be next door. And then as far as the subdivisions, I think it's something the town should be looking at and being willing to do. I think it would definitely hinge on who's the developer, you know, how viable is it that they're going to be selling out, their time frame. But I think that for the town to just say, no, if we're saying we want middle-class families to live here close to town, I think it's something the town, if that's what we want, that's what we need to be willing to look at.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of boils down to, you know, at what point do we bet on Three Lakes? So, you know, putting debt out there and taking on that infrastructure development and, you know, taking, you know, another $1 million, $1.5 million in road debt or sanitary infrastructure, which actually it ain't gonna be $1 million, it'll be a lot more than $1.5 million. But, you know, that's a gamble. And that's one that, you know, that we would have to take, I think, to the voters. But I think from that perspective, I mean, if I should, you know, win the election, I would be fully supportive of that. I mean, we have to, again, business case scenarios, we got to look at them all. But I think there's some times that we've got to sit back here and take a bet on Three Lakes too. It's a great community, but you know, we may have to take a little risk and take a little bet out of here. It's always been a pretty conservative community financially. You know, we've got dealt some death blows with the fires we've had, the Chalet, the Oneida Village, the diner, you know, Kugelich is out on Virgin Lake. I mean, we've lost a lot of old businesses in town that were great places. We've got to figure out how we get back on this town again to bring people in here. And if it looks at laying on some debt, that may be something we have to do. But again, we got to look at what the proposal is and how do we think we can pay that back.
Do you have a question? Sorry, we're having to share mics.
Well, I appreciate Mary's comments here with regard to the village issue and study. Three Lakes as a town is larger than 2/3 of the villages in our state. It's nuts. Secondly, I would suggest that on the voting issue, you are at the end right now, the black and white issue. There is no more. There's studies galore. You can think about New Hampshire, you can think about Minnesota. It's a black and white issue. I think the basic issue here, is it a state legislative issue or is it a town board issue? If the state were to decide that they would put in some minimum requirements, I would hope that they would say also that the local governments have a right to be more restrictive, even to the extent of total prohibition. One of the things you have to recognize is that this is a battle between the manufacturers of sports. Whoever can make the biggest wake wins. And that battle goes on year after year. All the studies that say there are parameters, certain measurements, feet from the shore, so much depth, they're meaningless 5 years, totally meaningless. So I would suggest that you get a position that if you have the authority as a town board, you exercise that authority in a way that protects our precious resource. Now, I would like to say some other things, but I want to also thank two of you for putting yourself out board election. I worked the legislative process in Madison and Washington 36 years. I have always respected whether Democrat, Republican, I don't care how liberal, how conservative, a person that puts themselves out. Thank you very much for doing that. There you go.
So just to clarify your point though, your point was about wake boats. Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure I was clear about that. Yeah, that's a tough one. Didn't need the right answer on it. I'm an outdoors guy, so I like the resource we have.
If I were to say one more thing, I would like to see the Three Lakes Town Board loosen up. If you take a look at where Three Lakes is, we're in the middle of 3 county seats, Rhinelander, Eagle River, Brandon. We are gradually losing whatever identity you have.
Right.
It's creeping and it's very creepy. And so, but I want to see the town board to be a partner with the other organizations, with the town thinkers, is to take a look at what is positive that we can do. Be positive, not try to constantly shrink in our mentalities of what we think. We got to think bigger, but we've got to think, how is it that we can be unique, viable, and valuable? You have to move in that direction. And I still think that for you on the town board, or your candidates for the town board, it's very important that you adopt a position and an attitude that Three Lakes, it does not have to be the past. It doesn't have to be the future. It can be a great future. A great future. Different than what it is, like you're talking about being different. But positive. Not minimal. Not a minimal hotel. But something that is really unique and makes people want to be here. That's what I'd like. Thank you.
You want?
You know, we're all here because we love this town. And I like to, when I meet new people, I say, what brought you here? Like, why do you live here now? Why do you visit here? And many people have the same story that, you know, our grandparents, great grandparents came, and, you know, some people have roads named after them. We don't all, but came for generations. And then we fell in love with the town as children, and we got here. I always say, I wasn't born in Three Lakes, but I got here. And so you know, we want that, those same traditions and those same experiences for our children and our grandchildren. And we just want this town to continue to grow and thrive for our children's children and the next generations going forward. So we can just continue this special thing that we have here. And I think we've got to be wise in the decisions we make and not grow too fast or too crazy, or you need to leverage money to invest and gamble on the town. I love how you said that, but also we've got to be wise in that, like go crazy, getting into debt. But, and I just love this enthusiasm and this like refreshed excitement we have for community involvement, because I will tell you, last year at this, I was here and the amount of people in the room was probably a quarter of the amount of people that are here now. So thank you for reinvesting in our town with your time. And I would just encourage everybody to continue to come to the town board meetings and educate yourself and read the minutes and read the agendas and ask the questions and make appointments with people on the board. And like, let's continue this conversation, because this is what we need. I think this new fresh breath of life from people that are new to the town and people whose families have been here forever. We all bring a different perspective. And I think it's great to continue this conversation.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think that there's been a lot of good ideas and things, and I really agree with this lady right here. One, so that, I really agree with, the uniqueness of this town. And we can grow, and I think that we can, if we work at it, keep the uniqueness that it is. My question is though, the commerce, the infrastructure, the housing, what kind of a time frame are we looking at to accomplish something like that? Do you think?
That's, I'm a magic 8 ball, I'd say, give me an answer. That's a tough one, because you don't know, we're starting at ground zero. You know, it's, you know, you gotta get a TID or we gotta get village power so we can, you know, usurp it and do it ourselves. You know, you'd like to say we could start some of this within the year, you know, but it is going to be baby steps, and then it's gonna be, you're gonna run parallel tracks on a project, right? You're gonna have multiple work streams, but you're gonna need people from the community engaged. You can't, it's not the town board. And by the way, if either one of us would, we'll only one vote, right? There's still 3 other supervisors and a town chairman as well. So it's not just one person's gonna be able to come in and fix this. You've got to get the community to rally for it. And I'll tell you what, I've been in this town for a long time. A lot of people talk a great game, but nobody wants to lay down the skin and do some work. So, you know, that's the other side of it. Who wants to step up and commit? Because it ain't easy. You know, you're taking your time away. I like to hunt and fish and like to be out in the woods. Well, and I got to go meet with the Forest Service on something. So, you know, it takes time away from what I retired and want to enjoy to do. But you know what? I have a passion for it. I love this town. I want to see some things change and develop. But people are going to have to step up. You know, we're going to have other people outside of just the town board. It's not just a town board issue. We can make it viable to go do, but we need townspeople to come in and help, or we'll call them villagers because we want to be a village. So we need villagers, and we will not be the village people, but we need villagers. So we need villagers. No, we're not doing that. So we need villagers that help. You know, and honestly, we need to encourage the younger generation and you know, their grandparents who probably have the capital, lay some money out and open a business.
Yeah.
You know, it's scary, it's all that other good stuff, but you know what? We need to see some businesses open in this town. And that entrepreneurial spirit,
Like a chicken
in
ranch.
this town. What's that?
Like a chicken.
You know, if we knew what that was, we would do something with the chicken ranch. It's a concept that has escaped me. I don't know what they're doing over there, so,
It would be funny if after all this time there actually was a
there is.
Yeah.
That's my wife, she'd like to see the damn thing go away. But no, it is, but we are gonna need townspeople to step up.
Yeah.
We just really are. You can't, the 5 people on town board can't do it. Because it's gotta be other people and contacts, right? You know, there were some times we needed to get some access done on some ATV stuff. Well, at the time, the US Forest Service was run by a person I went to UW Stevens Point, was sitting in DC. It was a simple phone call. So what's your Rolodex? Oh, we don't have Rolodexes anymore. What's your phone book look like, right? Who do you know that could help get some gates open? If we need a calling campaign down to the state to get a TID or to get anything we need to get some funding up for the Northwoods, you know, we're building a jet plane fuel mill over in Hayward. Why aren't we building something here? So, you know, there are some of those things there. We need to be hitting Madison up about putting some money into this community. You know, so, but again, that's how we vote and how we call and the letters we write. So.
Anything else? Anybody? All right, well, we're gonna wrap this up now, I guess. Huge thanks to everybody who came out. This is a great turnout tonight. I'm not sure how many are online, but thanks to all of you too. And thanks to our candidates who really appreciate
Thanks
you
for
guys
having us.
coming out here and
Hopefully Ellen Ryan had that baby soon, so,
tomorrow, apparently, she's getting induced tomorrow.
all right, there we go.
So she wanted to be here. She wanted me to say that. She really wanted to be here, but